Welcome to AI Book Highlights. Today we're looking at a really interesting book. It's Sally K. Norton's Toxic Superfoods, How Oxalate Overload is Making You Sick.
Yeah, this one definitely challenges some common ideas about healthy eating. It dives into oxalates, these compounds in, well, a lot of plant foods we often reach for.
Exactly. We're going to pull out the key insights Norton presents about what these oxalates are and how they might be impacting your health, potentially in ways you haven't considered.
It's fascinating because, so many people are trying to eat healthier, loading up on superfoods, plant-based stuff.
Right.
And this book suggests that for some, those very foods could be leading to oxalate overload, maybe contributing to certain health problems.
So we'll unpack what the book covers. We've got 5 key highlights we want to discuss.
And then we'll finish with 3 actionable takeaways you might want to think about.
Okay, let's get started. Highlight number 1, the invisible culprit. Norton really frames oxalates as, well, almost like a hidden toxin produced by plants.
That's right. It's essentially part of a plant's defense system. They make oxalic acid to protect themselves from things trying to eat them. Fungi, insects, microorganisms, even us.
Huh. Like a chemical weapon almost.
Kind of, yeah. It's their way of saying, don't eat me. And it's potent enough that humans have actually harnessed it. Norton mentions its use as a pesticide in beekeeping, for instance.
Oh, interesting.
And even historically, some African hunters apparently used oxalate-rich plant sap on arrowheads to paralyze prey.
Wow, okay, so this isn't just some passive compound sitting in the plant.
Not at all. And it gets more complex because this oxalic acid binds with minerals like calcium to form crystals.
Oxalate crystals.
Crystals, like tiny rocks inside the plant.
Sort of, but they come in different shapes. Some are like grains, some sharp blocks, spiky balls, and then there are these things called raphides.
Raphides.
Yeah, they're like microscopic needles. Plants seem to design them specifically to puncture cells and deliver the toxins more effectively. Think of kiwi fruit. The crystals in there can actually be fatal to caterpillars. It's quite a defense mechanism hidden in our fruit bowl. Okay, highlight 2. Widespread but misunderstood.
This is a big one. We look at food labels for fat, salt, carbs, right?
Sure.
But oxalate content, it's almost never there. It's just not part of the standard nutritional evaluation we do.
So it's flying completely under the radar for most people, and maybe even professionals.
That's what Norton suggests. Even many nutrition experts might not have a deep understanding of which foods are really high in oxalates. It hasn't been a major focus.
Give us an example.
Well, take leafy greens, we lump them together, but arugula or romaine lettuce. Pretty low in oxalates.
Okay.
Spinach. It can have hundreds of times more oxalate. Hundreds.
Whoa, so that big bag of mixed salad greens.
Could be packed with high oxalate stuff like spinach, chard, or beet leaves alongside the lower oxalate one. You might be getting a huge dose without realizing it.
And is the data even reliable? Like if we wanted to look it up?
That's another issue Norton raises. Measuring oxalates accurately is tricky. Levels can change based on the plant variety, where it was grown, how old it is, how you cook it.
So the numbers we do have might be a bit shaky.
They can be, yeah. There's variability, which makes precise tracking difficult.
Okay, let's move to highlight 3. The triple threat of oxalate. Sounds ominous.
It refers to the 3 main ways Norton says oxalates can cause trouble nutritionally. First, they can grab onto minerals in your food, right in your gut, and stop you from absorbing them.
So blocking nutrients.
Blocking absorption, yes. Second, if oxalic acid gets into your system, it can actually pull minerals out of your own body fluids and cells.
Stealing minerals.
Essentially, yeah, binding with them. And third, the oxalate ions in those short crystals we talked about can directly interfere with how your cells and tissues work, potentially causing damage or irritation.
So it interferes with minerals and directly messes with cells.
That's the idea. Norton cites an old study, back from 1939, where rats fed lots of spinach developed weak bones and problems with reproduction. The conclusion then was calcium depletion from the oxalates.
And it's not just that the calcium in spinach is hard to absorb.
Right. It can also stop you from absorbing calcium from other foods you eat at the same meal, like milk or cheese, for example.
It's a double whammy, like you said. Does it affect other nutrients too?
It seems so. Norton suggests high oxalate levels can increase your body's need for vitamins B6 and B1 thiamine. So you might be eating enough B vitamins, but the oxalates could be hindering their use.
Making you functionally deficient even if your intake looks okay on paper.
Exactly. It's about usability, not just intake.
Which brings us nicely to highlight 4, the standard dietary advice paradox.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting. Think about standard advice. Eat less fat, cut calories, Eat more fruits and vegetables, especially dark leafy greens.
The foundation of most healthy eating plans, right?
Pretty much. But Norton points out that this very advice, while well-intentioned, could push some people towards eating way more oxalates, especially if they lean heavily on things like spinach or Swiss chard.
So trying to be healthy could inadvertently cause this specific problem for some individuals.
That's the paradox. And look at common health swaps. People replace refined flour with whole grains or meat with beans and lentils.
Things generally seen as healthier choices.
Right, but many of those swaps, beans, whole grains, even pseudo-grains like quinoa and buckwheat are also quite high in oxalates. Almond flour instead of white flour, also high.
Huh.
And Norton even calls out some extreme health trends like huge green smoothies absolutely packed with high oxalate veggies, suggesting they might be doing more harm than good for certain people.
It really highlights needing to understand the specifics, not just broad categories. Okay, highlight 5, oxalate accumulation and clearing. What happens long term?
Well, the body doesn't necessarily get rid of all the oxalate you consume right away. It can build up.
Build up where? Just kidneys. We hear about kidney stones.
Kidneys are the most well-known place, yeah, because that's where it gets concentrated for excretion. But Norton points to research, including animal studies, showing oxalate deposits can end up in bones, muscles, your liver, heart, even the brain and eyes.
Wow, all over the body. Can the body clear it out?
It tries to, mainly through the kidneys, but our capacity to excrete it is limited. If you're constantly taking in high amounts, the system can get overwhelmed, leading to that accumulation.
Okay.
Now, what happens if someone who has been eating high oxalate foods suddenly cuts way back? Norton talks about a clearing process, sometimes called oxalate dumping.
Dumping. What does that feel like?
It can vary a lot,
Yeah.
but the idea is, as the intake drops, the body starts releasing stored oxalates from tissues back into circulation to be eliminated. This release phase can apparently trigger temporary symptoms like fatigue, maybe headaches, joint pains, skin issues, things like that.
So feeling worse before feeling better, potentially, and mistaking it for something else.
That's the potential confusion, yes. These flare-ups might seem random, but could be linked to the body processing previously accumulated oxalates.
Fascinating, and maybe a bit unsettling. Okay, let's pivot to the actionable takeaways. Based on all this, what can people actually do? Takeaway number 1.
First step is simply awareness. Start familiarizing yourself with the foods that tend to be really high in oxalates. Norton provides lists, but general categories include most nuts and seeds. Think almonds, chia, poppy, hemp plus beans, whole grains.
And those specific vegetable families.
Right, the amaranth family, that's spinach, beets, beet greens, chard, quinoa, and the buckwheat family, buckwheat itself, and rhubarb.
And remembering the huge difference within categories like spinach versus lettuce.
Crucial point. Don't assume all greens are the same in terms of oxalates, and also watch out for processed foods made with high oxalate ingredients.
Like almond milk.
Exactly. Or some breakfast cereals using whole grains known to be high. Read ingredients.
Okay, awareness is key. What's the second takeaway? How should someone approach changes?
Norton generally advises against going cold turkey, especially if you suspect you've been eating a high oxalate diet. Drastic elimination might trigger that uncomfortable clearing process we just talked about.
So, moderation first.
That seems to be the suggestion. Maybe start by tracking your intake of the very highest oxalate foods. See if you notice any patterns with how you feel. The book mentions a sort of maintenance zone around 150 milligrams a day as maybe a safer target initially than trying to get down to, practically zero right away.
Makes sense. Less shock to the system.
Yeah, and just pay attention. Notice how your body feels after eating certain meals. That self-observation can be really informative.
Good advice. And the third actionable takeaway, supporting your body.
Yes, given that oxalates bind minerals, ensuring adequate mineral intake seems important. Norton particularly emphasizes calcium. Getting enough calcium with your meals might help bind some oxalate in the gut, reducing how much gets absorbed.
So maybe pairing high oxalate foods with calcium sources, if you eat them, or ensuring overall calcium intake is good.
That's the principle. Discussing calcium needs with a doctor or a nutritionist might be wise. Beyond that, the book touches on general support, getting enough rest, managing stress, limiting other toxins, maybe even things like gentle heat or cold therapies if you're experiencing discomfort.
So a kind of holistic approach while you figure out the oxalate piece.
Pretty much. And just being mindful that any big dietary change can affect your body, so supporting yourself through that transition is generally a good idea.
This has been incredibly insightful. It definitely adds another layer to thinking about healthy food.
Absolutely. For some people, understanding oxalates might just be a missing piece of their personal health puzzle.
Well, Sally K. Norton's Toxic Superfoods goes into much, much more detail than we could cover here, blending her own story with the science. If this overview sparked your interest and you want to really understand oxalates and how they might affect you, we definitely encourage you to grab a copy of the book.
It's a detailed exploration worth considering if some of these points resonated.
We'll put a link to purchase Toxic Superfoods in the description below. Thanks so much for tuning in to AI Book Highlights.